Hi everyone, my name is Kate and welcome to our webinar today, SAP HANA Native Application Development. Today we'll hear from three people at Dickinson & Associates. First from Rob Jerome, Director of Business Intelligence, then Lead Architect of VI, Tim Korba, and Consultant Eric Zenner. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can submit them using the Q&A dialog box, and we'll be answering a couple of questions after the presentation and the demo. And now I'll hand things off to Rob.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everybody, for attending today. This is the third webinar in a series of webinars that Dickinson & Associates is doing this summer on what we'll call the innovation areas of SAP. So our first two webinars were on geospatial dashboarding via Business Object and Fiori, the new face of the new user experience, user interface for SAP. Today's topic, native application development on HANA, is actually the one that I'm personally most excited about. We see HANA as either being an option for running our SAP suite, our SAP BW system, or a sidecar appliance for analytics. But what is very, very important and what the future brings on HANA is something called native application development. So think of the potential to build custom HTML5 applications or SAP user interface applications right on top of HANA, a much more flexible approach to development. A move away from a waterfall approach to implementation towards a more agile approach. Some of these are things that, for those of us who have been around SAP for a while, we really haven't seen in SAP. So it's very, very exciting. Today's demonstration and today's webinar will kind of give you an overview of native HANA application development, and then we'll walk into a demo to show you actually how this can be deployed. We've got two gentlemen that will be presenting today. One is Tim Korba, Lead Architect for Dickinson & Associates, and the other is Eric Zenner, one of our technical consultants. With that, I would encourage you to ask questions or submit questions, and I'll hand it over to Tim Korba to do the first part of our webinar.
Thanks a lot, Rob. As Rob introduced, my name is Tim Korba, and I am the Lead Architect for Dickinson & Associates, and I'm joined with my colleague, Eric Zenner, and he specializes in our HANA and Fiori development. During today's presentation, we're going to discuss, at a high level, HANA native application development and how it fits into the overall SAP user interface strategy. At the end, I hope that we clearly identify the following: how SAP HANA UI platform can support SAP HANA native development, what SAP HANA XS and UI are at a high level, and how we can basically quickly create a SAP HANA native application. This is going to be our agenda. We have a lot to go over. So we have a progression here to discuss the SAP's high-level UI strategy, and then we're going to dig into each of the components for SAP HANA native development, with finishing up with an overall demo to create a simple application and then show you a more complex application as well. This next screen is a few quotes. And really what I'm trying to achieve here are I want to highlight three main areas. Big data is here to stay. It's amazing how, everyone today is consistently using their mobile phones to track every experience, every thought, and every vision at that point in history. So just in general, we're connected more now to technology than ever before. User interface consistency. More times than not, when we're on the internet and we're surfing, we have disparate front-end interfaces. They're inconsistent, poor usability, and they provide overall issues when communicating from one website or application to the next. And many of these just lack that modernized look and feel that we all desire and need. So just think about this. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to provide and create a seamless application that is consistent in approach, design, and can be reusable for the end user to consume? And the last point is technology is moving very quickly. The world isn't standing around, neither are our competitors, nor are the end users' needs and requirements. So generally, what is SAP HANA? Three main buzzwords that everybody hears: in-memory analytics, real-time data, and big data. And let's just briefly go through these. In-memory analytics, it's simply data is in memory, or RAM instead of on disk. By having this data in memory, we're able to access the information more efficiently without impacting the overall performance of the system or the end user reporting. And then real-time data is end users' needs and requirements are continuing to need this real-time information. But not only real-time, but consuming this large amount of information. So with tools such as SLT and data services, it's providing those capabilities, that real-time capability that we need. And then big data. Whenever we talk SAP HANA, everyone thinks big data. It's the biggest buzzword out there. And basically SAP is allowed, it's providing that capability to store large amounts of data in memory. And then we're able to consume that at the presentation layer in an efficient manner. So in summary, what we're stating is SAP HANA is just a flexible, multi-purpose, data source agnostic appliance. So what is SAP doing with the user interface strategy? Their main objective is to transform the end user experience. This includes streamlining the look and feel of the applications, providing a simple and easy interface to create those applications. So what have they done so far? Well, Fiori, as Rob briefly spoke about of another webinar we did previously, is one of the pieces that they introduced. And it introduced HTML5 and providing that device agnostic type of tool that just simplifies the overall transaction, that ECC transaction-based user interface. So it provides that modernized look and feel that, again, I spoke about earlier, that we're looking for. So what's the importance of this? Well, it's taking that robust and mature stabilized back-end system and creating that makeover, that, again, modernized look and feel. And there's two types of scenarios for SAP Fiori. There's SAP ECC against Oracle, and then there's SAP Suite on HANA. And this latter one is where the native application development and where the two will merge as well. So we'll speak about that briefly later during the demo. The next is screen personas. So we have Fiori, this product Fiori, and the end users, they want to reduce that noise as well. They want to personalize that front end that Fiori provides. So it's allowing them to do another step and remove fields that they may or may not need. And the last piece in which we're here for is the SAP HANA UI platform. So, you know, many of us, when we think about SAP HANA, we think about the buzzwords we spoke about. We don't think about the complete platform. It's one of the last pieces of this puzzle. So it provides that centralized repository and seamless integration for the HANA native application development. And it provides that consistent approach for the end user experience, for the developer experience, and that designer experience. Each of these all are integrated within this overall solution. So, and the last piece is, so let's just talk about in general an overview of the HANA UI platform. It provides that gateway between the HANA database and the end user. And at the core, it's basically that real-time data platform is the database, is the HANA database, but it provides that fundamentally different capability than other engines. By having one platform, we're providing that one-stop shop. We're reducing the overall TCO. We're providing that efficient database retrieval. We're simplifying the overall architecture. And we're reducing the overall skill sets that are required to do this development within the team. And it's provided three main components. And these are what we're going to speak about throughout this presentation. Number one is the HANA Extended Services. The main thing to realize here is this is available after HANA Support Pack 5. So it's something to understand, depending on where you're at in your support packs. So this is the application web server. This is going to be the engine that's going to expose the HANA data to the end user. This is where OData services are going to be introduced. And then we have SAP HANA UI integration services. And this is a tool that's tightly integrated with the SAP HANA Studio if people have developed within the HANA environment. It provides all the development tools, the APIs, the widgets, the dedicated wizards for the developer and the application designer to basically use that, again, going back to the consistent approach that we want with application development. And SAP UI leverages the UI5 libraries and the capabilities that are involved, which standardizes, again, those UI patterns and how they're delivered overall. We want to, again, create that clear and consistent message to the end user and normalize what that user experience is. Now, there's two different types of development options that whenever you have a back-end HANA database that you could have. You could have native, which we're speaking about, or non-native. The main difference is where the development is occurring. So, for example, during Sapphire, we showed both types of development. For the non-native application development, we actually created a real-time e-commerce site which leveraged a Tomcat server, which was serving our pages to the front-end user. So instead of everything standing within the same HANA appliance, we had an external application web server. So with the native application development, there's no additional hardware or application servers that are required. Everything is within the appliance. And this next slide is providing a good comparison between ABAP and HANA. What I'm trying to achieve here is just to show, even though you have HANA, it doesn't mean ABAP's gone, and even if you don't have HANA, it doesn't mean, and vice versa. Both can be used in specific situations, and that guidance area talks through that. BW and HANA doesn't mean that you're going to do all native development. There are areas where ABAP is going to be introduced. So let's just go briefly over the architecture, and let's just start at the top, which is the presentation layer. This is how the user is going to consume the data. It's either going to be a desktop or a mobile device, possibly, and it's leveraging, again, HTML5. So this is going to provide the capability for that dynamic front-end presentation look, no matter what type of device that you're using. Everything is being leveraged on the end user side, the client side. So all the JavaScript which is running on the desktop, it's interacting back, but just in smaller portions. And all the HTML is being rendered on the desktop. Now the core of this is the middle and bottom sections, and this is what SAP calls the control flow logic. This is where the XS Engine comes into place. It's where our OData services is being created, that JavaScript communication, that XMLA communication. And through the demo, we're gonna speak about OData services. So let's just briefly talk about what that is. And it stands for Open Data Protocol, first and foremost, and it leverages the REST commands. All right, so the REST commands, what that's doing is providing you the capability to have everything driven out of the URL. So all your commands that you're going to do, your gets and your posts and your counts, all could occur within the URL. And in general, the XS Engine is the integral part of the overall UI communication between the front end and HANA database. And the last piece is the HANA database itself. This is where all your analytical and attribute and calculations you sit and reside. This is where all of the modeling is going to occur. So obviously we need this piece for the communication to occur with. So now that we've talked about how the architecture looks, let's just briefly talk about each of these individually, the main components independently. First we have the HANA Application Extended Services, or XS we're going to call it moving forward. It is the application/web server. It's providing the all-encompassing environment. It can support those simple to business complex applications. So it's where all the native development's really occurring, and all the communications back to the database. Again, the OData services and the HTML5. So what are some of the benefits and features of the HANA UI in general? I just want to touch base on a few of these. We're not going to go through all of them, but one of the ones that is important here is the property persistence. This shows, again, the embedded capabilities and development options that SAP has already provided the developer, allows them to not have to design and develop everything from scratch. They're providing you many different properties to work with right from the get-go. And this allows that quicker end-to-end development. We're reducing the overall development lifecycle with having these specific properties and widgets. Another one is context. This is where a lot of collaboration. Many businesses, they need that collaboration effort involved and integrated within whatever solution that they have. And this is what that is providing. It's allowing you to share, to bookmark, to email specific applications, maybe a specific point in time that you were doing some research in an area. We're going to be talking about purchase orders later. So maybe it's a specific purchase order, or maybe it's a specific sales order that you're looking at during that, and when you're analyzing that data that you're trying to share with others. So it provides that capability to either bookmark for yourself or share for others. And there's a couple end user benefits as well on the right-hand side here. And really what they're all talking about is just that, again, that personalization, that overall look and feel that the end user is going to achieve, receive with the tools that are provided for the developers. So what's involved with the HANA overall deployment steps? You know, this isn't, for many of us, it's new, it's not completely understood, but it still follows the same process, development process or life cycle that we would do for anything else. Initially, we have to obviously activate and implement the delivery unit for integration services. That's an important piece to have. We need to design the overall look and feel of our user, you know, our application, our UX. And then we have to identify each of those components. How do they interact with each other? Are there, you know, what are our applications? Are there new ones that we have to create? Are there old ones that we've already created that are going to be within this overall user interface? And then we have to design and develop all those components. We have to integrate them within the widgets so they are reusable over and over. Design the overall application site. What is that? Again, we stated we had the design of the overall look and feel, so now we have to design and actually create that application site and then launch that page. And that's what we're going to show you through this demo. So two more things I want to touch upon, and this is going to transition into our demo, is the HANA Studio. This is the tool that if any of us on the phone have worked with HANA already, you're pretty familiar with. It has different perspectives throughout the studio, from admin to modeling, and we're going to be working directly in the development perspective. And there's three main areas that we'll focus on. The repository, this is what is on the HANA server. So it's giving you that detailed content navigator of what is actually on the HANA server. But we have that Project Explorer portion too. So this is an embedded Eclipse tool. So we're integrating, SAP has integrated Eclipse into the HANA Studio to provide us the capability to, number one, work directly in the HANA Studio and not have another tool to work with. But number two, it provides us that local projects capability. So we could create our local projects without pushing it to the HANA server right away. And then our navigator, that's just showing us the different schemas we have, the different attribute, analytical, and calculation views that exist within our HANA, which we will use within our application site or OData services to expose that information. We obviously have version management. Those capabilities exist as well. That provides, you know, parallel development capabilities. And overall, this is just giving us that tightly integrated, you know, interface development tool within HANA Studio which provides those dedicated wizards that I was speaking about, those APIs. And you're going to see that ease of use again that SAP has introduced within this tool. So for time purposes in the demo, we're not going to be able to get into every piece, but we wanted to give you a quick view, and I'll just go over some of the areas here, which is the application designer. Again, this is going to be directly in the HANA Studio. On the left side, we could see the actual HANA native application, which we created with our widgets. We have a PO header. We have some other purchase order information on the right side. So it's a drag and drop type of tool that's going to allow you to bring which widgets that you need to expose to the end user. On the right side is all the widgets that we have available to us to use. Again, when we create those applications, we're going to embed them in a widget, and that's going to be a reusable widget for our designers. We also have our menu options on the far right. This is going to provide the capabilities to create more pages. Maybe your application site has multiple pages. Maybe it's a purchase order and a sales order page. We also have other options such as properties and different layouts you may want to use. Again, to provide the same look and feel from site to site. Now, we're going to get into the demo, so I'm going to hand it off to Eric Zenner. I hope we provided a good overview of each of these different components. What we try to do is simplify these components, so when Eric goes through the demo, we're tying them all together. So, Eric?
All right. Thank you, Tim, and thanks, Rob, as well. Again, I'm Eric Zenner, part of the development and mobility team at Dickinson & Associates, and I specialize in Fiori and HANA development. I want to reiterate the fact now that we're excited to be talking about the benefits of HANA outside of the obvious database improvements that everyone else is talking about. So now that Tim's given you a high-level overview, I want to start to actually show you some of these tools in action. Specifically, we want to solve a problem we have at Dickinson & Associates where we need to expose purchase order data to an administrative user group who doesn't have access to SAP. We have the data on our HANA system, but they can't go through the traditional GUI, so we need to expose the data separately. In order to solve this problem, we're going to be working with the XS Engine and an SAP UI5 view. And finally, we're going to demonstrate the features of UI integration services by building a web page using Page Builder and reusing some previous code we built using widgets. And because we're not going to have time to get into a detailed application, to build a detailed application, I also want to quickly walk you through a detailed application to give you some further, to show you some further features of the XS Engine. All right, I'm going to switch over away from the presentation to my virtual machine where we have access to our HANA server. And the first thing I want to show you here is a preview of what we're going to be building. Within just the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to have this page up and running here where we've used SAP UI5 and displayed purchase order data. So Tim detailed the fact that with HANA native development, all of our data and code is on the HANA database. And he also mentioned that in order to manipulate this code, we have HANA Studio. So let's get into HANA Studio here. HANA Studio is your all-inclusive HANA repository and your place to change all of your objects. So what they've done is they've created multiple perspectives in order to use these tools. Within the upper right-hand corner, I've already set up our system, our HANA Studio environment, to use the three main development perspectives. One that I want to touch on briefly is the HANA modeler perspective. If you're used to working in HANA Studio at all, you're familiar with the modeler perspective because this is where you'll go to add new tables, create new views, or create database procedures. The necessary tables that we'll need for our purchase order demo have already been created here, so we don't want to waste any time within the modeler perspective. We want to jump right over to the HANA development perspective. The first thing we want to note here is Tim mentioned all these tabs in this demonstration, but I also want to give you a rundown of what exactly they show you. The first thing we see here are all the different HANA environments we can connect to. We're going to be working with our HA1 system, which is actually on Service Pack 8. Again, you have a view into the content on your HANA system using the catalog here, your database content, but you also have your development content within the content folder. What SAP has done here is broken down your development objects by packages. These packages are used to group related applications, control authorization to objects, and group related objects into delivery units, which is similar to your traditional SAP transports. So for the demo today, we want to go within our SAP package and demo and create a new package. So we can group all of our code together. We'll call this live demo, quite obviously because we're going through a live demo. So If I press OK here, we see the package is created on our HANA database right away. Now we'll jump over to the Project Explorer. Tim mentioned the Project Explorer is a standard Eclipse tool which is embedded in the Studio, and if you're not familiar with it at all, it's an integrated development environment that's used throughout the programming world because it supports multiple programming languages. I want to emphasize one fact here that's going to be coming up throughout the demo, and that's that SAP is moving away from proprietary solutions to trusted global development tools. So we've created the package where our new objects are going to be placed, but now we need to create an Eclipse project. So we're going to use a wizard, like we'll do throughout, and we need to create an XS project. I'll press Next. We need to give this another name. We'll use Live Demo throughout. And the last thing we need to do is link this new project back to our package. Because Tim mentioned the fact that within the HANA Project Explorer here, we're really just working with code that's local. And what's going to happen is, as we develop that code and save it, it's just saved to our C drive on our machine here. But the repository view, the last part we've yet to look at, is going to show us the relationship between our C drive, where we're doing our local development, and the HANA server. So as we save and commit our code, it goes from our C drive to the HANA server here. All right, so we have our empty XS application, and we need to share that project with the server. So we'll do something similar. We need to drill down into our new package, Live Demo, see the repository package here, and as we press Finish, our content, which isn't much to this point, but it's shared to the SAP server now. So let's get started with the XS application. We need to start by creating an XS shell. So we'll add an XS app file within our project. This is going to be a blank text file. All it does is signify that our project is an XS application. We don't need to add anything else. And then we need to go in and also add an access file. This is going to control who can get to our application. We do need to add a little bit of code here, and I'm going to be doing this throughout the demo. But I'm just going to copy and paste the code, and we'll go over it at a very high level. We won't get into any details. But here we're using JSON, and the first thing we're doing is specifying that our application is going to be exposed to our internal networks. And then the second thing we're doing is specifying the authentication method. And here we're going to use basic authentication, which is going to signify, or it's going to test that I'm a user in our HANA system when I go into the application. So our XS shell's created, but everything's just saved locally. Now I need to go ahead and activate this project. So once I activate it, you'll see the database object here, which means that XS application is pushed back to the server. Okay, so we have the shell here, but there isn't any data exposed. We don't have a view. Tim kept mentioning SAP UI5. So let's go ahead and create a new project in SAP UI5. Again, I'm using a wizard, and we're going to call this Live Demo. But to signify that we're building user interface, we want to add UI to the end of our project name. Here we have a few different options, and you'll see this throughout. Again, we have many options that are all industry standards. One being we can use a commons library, which is going to be using objects for browser-based views, but we also have the option to use a mobile library. In this case, we know we're just going to be looking at our application within Chrome, so we'll use the commons library, but we do have the option to create a specific mobile application here, and we're going to create it with an initial view using the wizard. Let's call this view the homepage view, and again, we're seeing multiple industry-wide options. We're going to use JavaScript to create our development paradigm. So we're going to use JavaScript code within our view. Okay, so as I press Finish, on the left-hand side, we'll see HANA Studio has gone through and created our project, and because we use the wizard, it creates everything we need for an initial SAP UI5 view. So this view's here, but what we need to do is actually embed those views, the SAP UI5 project, within our XS application. So instead of sharing the project like we did before with our new package, we're going to put it within that package, which is going to create it within the XS application. So if I click Live Demo here, our Live Demo UI SAP UI5 interface is going to be within our Live Demo XS application. So again, I'll press Finish. It's going to share the project back, and one thing to note here is we'll still be working within our UI5 project, but it's now embedded within our XS application. Okay, there's a few changes we have to make quickly because the wizard file doesn't know exactly where our UI5 files are stored on our HANA server, so I'll specify that. And then I'll also specify the fact that not only are we using the UI Commons library that we specified within the wizard, but we're also going to be using the table library because, as you saw in the preview, we're going to be adding a table to our application. The other thing I want to point out quickly is that all this index application or index file does is point to our default homepage view. So that view was created for us using the wizard, but we need to populate it with some content. So, like I said, if we open up the view, there's nothing in here quite yet. We'll go ahead and add some JavaScript content. So we're starting by adding just a few lines of code here. All this is going to do is display some text within our SAP UI application. First, we want to make sure everything's working. So our project's been shared, but like I showed you before, we need to activate it to make it useful. So if I highlight our new objects, they're now all pushed back to the database. And lastly, we need to activate the UI5 project. Okay, that's complete. So now we can jump back to the browser and make sure that our SAP UI5 application is working. The first thing we'll test is that our XS server is up and running and we can get to it. So here, all I've specified is our HANA database name and the XS port. You signify a specific port that's going to be used to get to all your applications that you're building on HANA. So it's up and running, it's working. Now we can test the page we just built. With the URL, you can see that our project is going to be embedded within the package. Our URL is going to be the package structure that we've set up on our server. So it's in Live Demo, we have Live Demo UI, and we have that index file. There we go, everything worked. So in just a few minutes, we were able to set up an XS application which uses HANA authentication and uses SAP UI5 to display a user interface. So our goal in the demo, though, was to show some purchase order data for our internal users. We obviously haven't done that yet. So we need to start by going back into our HANA Studio and exposing that data. That data is going to be exposed using OData services, which again was a common theme throughout the presentation. Just to reiterate, it's an open standard which has built-in tools to allow reading, aggregating, and filtering of the data that we're exposing. So we're going to expose it with OData services, and then that user interface we built is going to display the data within a table. So let's start with the services. Start with creating the service. We'll go within our XS application, and we're going to create a folder first because we want to segment our code. And there it is, services. And within the services folder, we're going to create an OData service that we're calling PO header. So XS OData. This again is just going to require a few lines of code, and I'll tell you exactly what we're doing with that code. All we're doing here is we're specifying the underlying data. In this case, it's a PO header table on our database, and we're telling the XS engine that we're going to call that service PO header. Just that easy in 4 lines of code. With an activation, we can go ahead and test the service. So if we move back to the browser, open a new tab here, and again, we'll need to specify the project we're working with, Live Demo, and we're calling the PO header XS OData file, and this is just going to show us that, number one, the service is working. It's not giving us any data. To get the data, we need to specify the service name at the end of the URL. It gives us this, as you can see, in a format that's not overly pretty. We're not going to be able to use this, but it can be used for developers. We can, however, using standard OData functions, display this data in different formats. So let's change this to XML. And let's say instead of building a website that's going to use this technology, you need the data exposed using XML. Here we go, just that easy. By changing the URL, we get our PO header data in XML format. This is a little bit easier to read, so you can see that it shows all of our rows within our PO header table and labels the elements within that row. So that's cool, but what we mentioned was the fact that there's also some inherent functions with OData services. So you can aggregate that data, you can perform different operations. We mentioned the count function, so let's try that one. If I add count to the end, it's going to tell me that within the PO header table that we're exposing, there's 2,000 entries. So there you see the inherent functionality that we're going to utilize by integrating it with SAP UI5 next. So the data is exposed. It's not in a format for our users, though. So let's go back to the SAP UI5 view and update it. Okay, so we're back. Now we want to update our UI5 project. And that view we've already created, that just has our header text. We want to go ahead and add an SAP UI5 table to display our purchase order headers. So if I copy and paste some more content in here, I'll quickly go over it. I don't want to bore you with the details, but what we're doing is we're accessing the OData service we just built, and then we're building a table, and all we're building are the columns. So we're saying we want to use all the inherent functionality of SAP UI5, but these are the columns we want to display. So we'll save that. And then again, activate this on the database so we can get back to testing and showing you some of the cool features. It's activated. If we go back to the browser, here's the original page we built. To retest it, give me 2 seconds to clear the browser cache. And done. So now we can refresh our SAP UI5 page. And now we see, just that easy, we've used an access application with SAP UI5 to expose our purchase order data for the Dickinson employees. So I mentioned that OData Services has some aggregating and filtering functionalities. And I mentioned that SAP UI5 integrates with those functionalities. So without doing any extra coding, we can already do things like sort by our most expensive invoices. Those would be the cheapest. Our most expensive invoices, or POs. And then we can even filter the data right in this SAP UI5 table without any further development. So I can add a filter. And there we go, our data is filtered. We have an XS application with SAP UI5 all done within 15 minutes. So not only is that going to make your developers happy, but the quickness at which you'll be able to deploy business requirements is going to make everybody on the call happy, or it should. So we've mentioned most of the things that Tim brought up during the demo, with the exception of UI integration services. So let's now get into UI integration services and build a page using widgets. Within HANA Studio, we want to go back to our XS application, and let's create a UIS folder. So we have our objects, again, segmented. And because, as we promised, there's no coding necessary, all we need to do is create a new project, or a new file here that's an application site. So we have a UI application site option. We'll use that, specify a name, and here we'll call it Live Demo UIS. And again, we're given different options. We're going to create a standard site, but it's really cool. We mentioned that you could do Fiori development right on your HANA server using native development. Here's one of those options, to build a Fiori launchpad right within an application site wizard. Let's get into the standard site. As I press finish, right away, we promised we'd only be working in HANA Studio, so we're still in HANA Studio here, and now we can develop a UIS application site. We touched on the fact that you could do some customization right off, so we'll call this purchase orders. And Our page is created. It looks nice, but there's nothing there. So we can go to our widgets page, and within the widgets, we have previously developed content. So what I did before the demo was encapsulate that page we built, the SAP UI5 page, into a widget. So let's go ahead and first drop that into our designer. And let's say not only do we want them to see purchase order header details on that page, but we also want to show a purchase order work list for them in the same page. I'll drag and drop that widget that was previously developed. And then here I can move around the widgets, and we can make it look pretty for our users. So we've used our previously developed code, and with no further development, we were able to build a new page. So UI Integration Services gives you that standard look and feel, and it gives you the ability in the future to, let's say, enhance your page. So Tim mentioned that maybe they don't just want to see purchase orders, but let's say they also want to see sales orders. We can add a new sales order page just that quickly. And if we'd have the application team develop some widgets, then we could have sales order widgets that we drop in there for them to use as well. So there's the overview of UI Integration Services and just how quickly we can get a great looking web page up and running. So the last thing we talked about looking at was a more detailed XS application. We built our simple XS application, but let's jump over to a detailed application to show you some more features. Again, we're working with purchase orders here. While we're going to show you more complicated functionality, we're using the same XS application framework with SAP UI5 and OData services that we used in our demo. So one thing that's cool I want to start with is the super search functionality. Traditionally, within SAP, you have the option of searching rows for certain content, but let's say you'd only search for a purchase order item in a search field. Now, because we're leveraging the power of HANA, we can do things like type in SA here, and it recognizes that there's a company called SAP in our table, but there's also a few cities that start with SA. So we're doing a search where we're not only searching one field at a time, but we're searching all the fields within our table. So there we're leveraging the speed and power of HANA. I'll show you how that filter works. Choose SAP, and right there we filtered our purchase orders. So now we can only see the purchase orders relating to SAP. In our demo, with the page we created, we were just displaying purchase order data for our users, but using the same application framework, we can go back and change the data on the HANA server. So we can create new purchase orders, edit purchase orders, or in the case of our example here, let's go ahead and approve a purchase order. So right here we have the purchase order status, and the approval set to initial. So let's go ahead and change that one. Let's accept it. The user interface, we're confirming that, and it was not only pushed back to the HANA database, but redisplayed here, so we see it's approved. So last but not least, though, I want to show you some analytical functionality that we can use within this page. If we jump over to the Reports tab, what we can see is we're summarizing purchase orders. We had 2,000 purchase orders, even more lines. I think it was over 6,000 lines, and we're summarizing all that on the fly. So because we pushed our application logic to the HANA server, and it's right next to our database logic, that's going to speed everything up. We're using the in-memory data, in-memory power of HANA to analyze our data. So let's say instead of seeing a summary of purchase orders by company name, we'd like to see it by city. Just that quickly, the HANA database recalculated and summarized the purchase orders, and it shows us the detail here as we hover over our pie chart. So we were able to see that we can edit data, we can do searches that weren't thought possible previously, and then we can do on-the-fly analytical processing. So that's all we have for the demo, but before I finish up, I want to jump back to the presentation quickly to show you guys a few things. What we've added is an appendix here with some further terminology, and most importantly, we've included some links so you could start learning some HANA native development techniques on your own. I'd really recommend watching and following the HANA Academy native development videos in the third bullet point here. And we're going to be sending out this presentation, so you all have this in the future, and you can go to these links yourself. So that's all I had for the demo. Kate, did we have any questions come up during the presentation?
Yes, we did. We received a couple of questions. One was, why use HANA native development instead of basic web pages that we have successfully deployed in the past?
All right. Well, I could give an answer for that, Eric. Really, why you would think about using this technology versus a possible, as I spoke about in the prior, you could have native development and non-native development. What you're speaking about would be non-native type of development. So you would have an external Tomcat server or another type of server that's serving your pages to the end users. By having this, we're providing that overall platform. So it's a one-stop shop again. It's reducing your overall TCO. So you don't have to have that extra hardware. You don't have to have those additional application and web servers. It's all embedded within your HANA platform. So in general, it's simplifying that architecture. Which we all are trying to achieve moving forward. Instead of having multiple disparate solutions, we're simplifying that approach to development and the end user view. So I think that's, high level. Eric, you think I've?
Yeah, that covers it.
Okay.
Explanation. Great. Kate, do we have anything else?
Yes, we've got one other question. Can the widgets on UI integration services communicate with each other?
Okay, that sounds a little bit more technical. I can take this one, Tim. Just to illustrate what that question is referring to, let me go back quickly to HANA Studio. So that's a great question because what they're asking is, all right, let's say on this page we've added a few widgets, but we want these widgets to talk to each other. Can they do that? And the short answer is yes. What SAP's done is given a space between the widgets where you can pass data and communicate using events. So they've given that functionality, and you could really develop some cool pages. Oh, and that actually brings me back to that XS application that we displayed at the end. So we're using widgets here for all of our content, the table, and some of the data to show that the widgets can communicate. I think we can use the items view here, yep. So as we click through different purchase orders, it's going to communicate to the widget down at the bottom and show you the lines of that purchase order. So yeah, they're clearly, they are communicating. I think that answers that question. Kate, anything else?
No, we don't have any other questions. I think Rob was going to jump in at the end here.
All right, Rob,
sure,
back to you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Eric. So to the folks that attended today, we certainly appreciate your attendance. We went through a lot of things, a lot of items involved in both the overview of HANA, the UI overview, application development on HANA, as well as the demo. I would encourage anybody that has other questions as you start to digest this material and research it to reach out to us. Our organization has spent a significant amount of time investing in our people and in the technology to make sure that we understand where it's going and practical applications. I hope today that you took away the flexibility in the solution. You saw what Eric was building. You saw a PO, basically a reporting application built directly on HANA, and the fact that it didn't take him very long to build that. Compare that to maybe a traditional ABAP report or a more structured development platform, and just think about the art of the possible. So the major takeaway from today is this type of application development, agile, flexible, is the future, and start to think about the art of the possible. And please pose any questions you have to our organization, and we can help you answer them.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.